Well, good morning. My name is Marnie Oakes Raleigh, and I'm the CEO of Evolve Systems, and I'm happy to be providing this wonderful information for our clients and for other business owners as they continue to evolve their website. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar hosted by Evolve Systems, and today our topic is Evolve Your Digital Strategy, Why Analytics Matter. Today it's my pleasure to introduce your host, Joe Drennan. Joe is our marketing manager at Evolve Systems and has nearly 20 years of marketing experience. He has spent a majority of his career as a marketing expert in various roles, exposing him to a vast array of industries ranging from manufacturing, finance, healthcare, franchising, and even the commercial playground industry. Joe excels at digital marketing with an emphasis on analytics in order to create and deliver data-informed and results-driven strategies. It is my pleasure to introduce an asset to our Evolve Systems team. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Drennan.
Thank you, Marnie. It's always nice to start a webinar hearing nice things about yourself. I want to thank everybody that's been able to log in already, and then those that are going to view this later on our recording. It means a lot to me and our team, and we appreciate your support on our monthly webinars. Just a heads up, the webinar is being recorded. We are going to mute everybody during the presentation, so if you have any questions, be sure to use the chat or Q&A feature. My colleague Carly will be monitoring those questions, and we'll be sure to bring them up during the Q&A session at the end once the presentation has been finished. So again, get those questions in. I'm eager to answer them. We will have the session available for your viewing pleasure as soon as we can, hopefully later today, so you can go back and rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. We'll also include a survey within the email that we send out with the recording. If you'd be kind enough to click on that survey and answer a few short questions, it would mean a lot to us as those responses help us improve these webinars based on what you, the viewer, really wants to know. So please take a moment to do that for us. We'd really appreciate it. So let's dive in. You know, what are we going to cover today? And the answer is quite a bit. We're going to cover what are analytics, why you should pay attention to them, why are key performance indicators or KPIs, you're going to hear me say that one a lot, why are they important? We'll cover some of the advanced analytics that you can look at once you understand the basic ones. We'll discuss a few cases that we've handled here at Evolve Systems where we've helped clients improve or build better websites. We'll cover some of the analytic tools that you could dive into later this afternoon if you're so inclined, and then we'll have our Q&A at the end. So let's begin. What are analytics? The basic definition is analytics is data. So where are we getting that data? There's four main pieces we'll cover today: our website, our paid advertising, our social media, and our email campaigns. So each platform can have a little bit of a different piece of data. When we're looking at web traffic and user data, analytics can give us a glimpse into how people are getting to our websites. And then once they're there, how are they interacting with our website? If you want them to buy something on an e-commerce page or fill out a form, you can see the paths people are taking to achieve those steps. You can also see where they might be getting caught up and abandoning the process, allowing you to make changes along the way to make that process easier for folks. Using analytics, you can get a better understanding of who your website visitors are using basic demographic data like age, location, and sometimes gender. That information isn't as available on web data as it is, say, social data. If you're a bit of an advanced user, you can also add dollar values to different goal conversions to get a better understanding of what the ROI of your website really is. When we look at paid advertising, if you're running ads, you want to know if your money is being spent wisely. So utilizing analytics, we can track that ROI. Google Analytics and Google AdWords have some nice seamless connections that allow us to track this. But if you're using other tools such as social media or email campaigns, we can also attach what are called UTM tracking codes to links that will help us gauge our ROI. So now you're wondering, what's a UTM tracking code? It's simple. It's a snippet of code that we add to the end of a URL that helps us track a campaign based on information provided. Basic information that UTMs allow for are the source, the medium, the campaign, the term, and the content. Most UTMs fill in the source, medium, and campaign. A typical UTM would have the source being Facebook, for instance, the medium, social media, and then the campaign could be 2020 summer sale. When we get into social engagement data, we know companies are not posting on social media just for SEO purposes or to make their followers smile. Those are, as Bob Ross would say, happy accidents or nice byproducts of posting. We post because we want sales or leads to be generated. Most social media platforms provide basic engagement analytics for business pages. You may not be able to find them easily if you don't know where you're looking, but don't worry, we have a recent blog post that has links to all of those social media analytic pages. And then email platforms. If you're sending out email campaigns, whether it be MailChimp, Constant Contact, whatever, every email platform has a tab with performance data. I've seen that tab called reports. I've seen it called analytics. I've seen it called insights. I've even seen analytic insights as one of the tabs. You name it, different platforms have titled it. But the important thing to know is each platform will give you the basic KPIs. So let's look at these different platforms and what the different KPIs are. I'm not going to lie, we're going to be on this slide for a little while, so bear with me. I've broken it up though to keep it interesting. We'll start with the website KPIs and move our way down, understanding that some of them will fall into the other buckets as well. So when we look at the website analytics, most people are instantly drawn to total views or visitors. I'm not a huge fan of this metric. The better metric to look at is unique visitors. Here's why. I can go on my phone in the morning, open up a website, that's going to count as one view. And then the kids want breakfast and I get distracted. So I come back a little bit later in the morning, go back to that website. That's a second view. Now my dogs want to go for a walk, so I'm distracted again. And I pull up the website later on while I'm waiting for my son's baseball game to start. There's 3 views. But if we look at the unique visitor metric, that's 1 unique visitor. To me and most analysts, unique visitors is a more important metric than total views because you want to know how many people, not how many views you're getting. It's also important to note that if you're setting up your Google Analytic account, you can exclude IP addresses, and I highly recommend excluding your business's IP address. Perfect example, one company I worked for many years ago had every computer set up so that their home screen was the company website. So anytime somebody opened up a new browser or a new tab, we were counting that as a hit to our website. And once I filtered that out, the very next report, our total visitors, not unique visitors, but our total views was down over 50%, and people got worried, and I explained what happened to them, and they realized that now the data they were getting was better data. So that was a fun one where I had to quell some nerves when I made that change. The next piece I like to look at is the bounce rate. So now you're wondering, what is a bounce rate? A bounce rate is when somebody lands on a website and either leaves right away or they don't spend much time on it and they leave the website because they're not finding the information they want. Surprising to a lot of people is that a good bounce rate is typically between 41 to 55%. Anything lower, you should be smiling. And even if you're in the 55 to say 65%, it's cause for concern, but don't panic. Anything higher, then we need to start looking at the page, looking at the copy, and looking at some of the SEO pieces there. Goal conversions can be a pretty broad KPI unless you have an e-commerce site. If you have an e-commerce site, the goal conversion is pretty straightforward. Somebody clicks purchase and they complete the purchase. When they do that, you can very easily calculate the ROI. Other goal conversions that we can include are form fills, joining a newsletter, watching a video, listening to a podcast, downloading a document, pretty much anything you want a visitor to do on a website. If you want to add a dollar value to these other, I'll call them ambiguous goals, you need to do a little math and understand those dollar values will only be estimates, not actual dollars like on an e-commerce site. So to do this, we have to look at how many of these goal conversions it takes for one sale, find the average dollar value for the sales for that goal, then divide it by the average number of goals completed for one sale. It's a lot of math, so I tried to simplify it. It takes 20 form fills for one sale that totals $100 on average. The average goal conversion is $5. Now we have the time on site versus pages viewed. This is another important pair of metrics to understand the difference and why we have to look at them together. A lot of people get excited if they see a lot of pages being viewed, and that's not a bad thing, especially if people are looking at different blog posts or different products on an e-commerce page. But we need to look and see if people are looking at so many pages because they're not finding what they want, or they're simply loving your content. So that's where the time on site or time on page comes in handy. Because I can view 10 pages on a website in 30 seconds and leave, or I can look at 2 pages and spend 10 minutes on the website. It's pretty obvious which one of those visits is more impactful to a business. Again, don't ignore the pages viewed. It can be a good thing, but you have to take that into consideration when looking at the time on site as well. I always like to keep an eye on top viewed pages. We always know that almost every single website I've looked at, the homepage is always going to be the top page viewed. But we also have an idea of what pages we want people to visit, and we think we know what pages they'll be interested in. But sometimes there are outlier pages that get a lot of traffic, and we need to pay attention to that to figure out why. A perfect example, one company I worked at was ready to discontinue a product because it had 0 sales in the last year. Nobody in the company thought it was very fun. But when I looked at the analytics, it was our most viewed product. So I started asking questions, and I started talking to our sales reps and found out that every call they went on, people were asking about it. So I asked them, why are you not pushing this product? And their response was, well, it's not very fun and it's a low dollar value. So we dug into it a little more, started to understand why people were interested in it. And rather than cutting this product and doing away with it, we did some investigating, found out it had a pretty high margin for us. So we started pushing it, and within a year, it went from 0 sales the previous year to being our top selling product, simply because we looked at the analytics. So don't ignore looking at the top viewed pages or wondering why a page that you don't find interesting is gaining momentum. Those are really fun ones to look at. The last one we'll look at for the website is the page load time. If a page is taking longer to load, its bounce rate's going to be higher, Google's not going to like it, and it's going to be a poor user experience. Knowing which pages are taking a longer load time is a great opportunity to work with your dev team to increase those load times by compressing images. There's a whole host of reasons page load times can be longer. So just knowing what pages we need to look at and then understand what's causing that is important. When we get into paid advertising, the biggest number that people gravitate to, and it's also the first one I look at, is usually impressions. that's a great piece to look at. We want to make sure people are seeing our ads. The next piece I always look at are clicks, because clicks are what cost us money. We can have our ad show up to millions of people, but if nobody clicks on it, our ad isn't going to cost us anything. It's when they start clicking. So that is something I look at first. I recently ran 2 ads. They each had the same number of clicks, but one of them had close to 10 times the number of impressions. Without looking for a show of hands, I think most people can determine which ad was the better ad. And that's the one with the fewer impressions, but greater clicks, because we'll always take quality over quantity. And impressions and clicks factor into the next 2 KPIs we look at, the click-through rate, or the CTR, or the cost per click. So the click-through rate is a simple equation of clicks divided by impressions. We want to know how many clicks we're getting per number of impressions. What many people are shocked to find out is most often, depending on the platform, a good click-through rate is less than 1%. Other platforms, it can be high as maybe 3%. It's usually pretty low. I launched one campaign a couple of years ago, and a VP said, "This is great. I want, about a 50% click-through rate." And everybody at the table put their hands up and said, "We need some education. Let's look for about 1%. And he was shocked. But once he understood, he was on board. And the next KPI is one that a lot of managers like to look at, and that's the cost per click. How much is this costing me? To find that out, we divide the total number of clicks by the total cost of clicks by the total number of clicks. Many paid advertising platforms will give you the total click cost, but the CPC averages out the cost amongst the number of clicks, because paid advertising is based on bid placement. So time of day can affect how much a click costs. You might get a click during peak hours that costs you $5, but another click at 11 p.m. at night that costs you $1. That means the average cost per click is just $3. As mentioned earlier, every email platform, MailChimp, Constant Contact, ExactTarget, you name them, provides minimum basic email performance data. The one data point a lot of people look at first is the open rate. It's a good number to look at. I'm not going to deny that, but we need to understand that it's not always very accurate. When I was working in healthcare, we sent out an email that went to external folks, and we sent out an email that went within the company. The email that went external would get about an open rate of about 24%, which was really good at the time. The internal email had an open rate around 97%. And everybody thought that was just normal, because everybody should be reading internal emails. But that didn't seem right to me. I learned, and this was over a decade ago, so some things have changed and improved on how this is reported, that when an email goes into an Outlook inbox, as soon as it hit that Outlook inbox on your computer, it was counting that as an open email, even if you didn't open it in Outlook and just hit the delete button. Our company, everybody used Outlook. So then somebody asked me, well, why aren't we at 100% then? The simple answer was some people were still reading their email on their mobile phone before it hit their Outlook inbox while their computer was turned off. So once we figured that out, we understood we had to look at a different data point. And that data point was the click-through rate. So the click-through rate, again, what does that mean? That is how many times people click on your call to action buttons within your email and follow that. Again, the number for a good click-through rate is much lower than you would anticipate. It's around 2.5% the last time I looked. I've seen them get a little bit higher if you've got a really good segmented list, but if your list is also very broad, it can be much lower in the less than 1% range. And that's when you know you have to go through your list and segment it a little bit better. Two other metrics I like to look at are the forward and bounce rate. If your email is being forwarded and forwarded a lot, it means people are finding them intriguing and useful and worthy of sharing. That's a good thing. Now the bounce rate is a little bit different in emails, is a little bit different than it is on a website. And there's two kinds of bounce rates when we're talking email. There's a hard bounce and a soft bounce. The easiest way to explain it is a hard bounce means that email doesn't exist anymore. The server may have been shut down, whatever. Those are emails you want to scrub from your list because you're just not going to get to their inbox. A soft bounce could mean their email box is full, their email server is a little leery of your email campaign, possibly your list because it's so big, so they marked it as spam. There's a number of factors, so that's where we need to keep an eye on how many soft bounces we have. If that number keeps going up or is really high, we need to be concerned. If it's low or non-existent, that's even better. And then we have social analytics. We've already covered a lot of important KPIs on the slide, but social platforms have some of their own unique data points to pay attention to. The first KPI to look at is reach or impressions. We'll always have some kind of following to our social media pages. But once a fan engages, it'll then start to show up in the feed of their friends and followers who maybe have the same interest. And if we have a company that sells sporting goods, specifically fishing equipment, and somebody clicks on our post and say I click on the post, my friend down the street who's into fishing, it's most likely going to show up on their feed because we have similar interests. But my cousin who doesn't like the outdoors, very much into music and the arts, it probably won't show up on their feed because of the way the social media algorithms are. Algorithms are a whole nother webinar. But the engagement is what creates more reach than what our current following is. And that's where the engagement metric comes in. I'm keeping this term somewhat generic because the ways of engaging vary from platform to platform, from liking, sharing, retweeting, commenting, pinning. There's so many new platforms coming out every day that the list is endless. All those engagements expand a post reach. The greater the reach, the greater the likelihood of increased engagement. And depending on your post call to action, this could also mean an increase in web traffic and hopefully increased sales or leads. So now we've covered some of the basic KPIs. Those are the KPIs I look at when I start building reports. Once that data starts telling me what I'm looking at and where I should be looking, these are the next few pieces I start to dig into. So, you know, as I look at things, I'm going to have questions. When I see spikes and dips, I need to find out why they're happening. When I see something unique, I like to start looking at the demographics. As mentioned, many of the platforms have rough estimates of age. I like to see if that age has skewed for whatever reason, whether it be messaging or other worldly events. If that hasn't changed, you know, I have to dig deeper. And I might look at locations. If I see there has been a drastic change in traffic from a certain region, I might start to look at what's been going on in the world. If a large portion of my audience is from the East Coast and a massive hurricane hits, that could explain a drop in traffic for the last month. And yes, this is an example from Hurricane Florence for a site I used to monitor. At the same time, if we're running paid advertising that targets Minnesota and Wisconsin, we can expect an increase in traffic from those locations. An often overlooked metric that I like to look at relates to technology. If you're looking to make updates to your website, and add video or other newer back-end technologies, but you're like a former manager I had that still uses Netscape for a browser, you might want to rethink your plans. At the same time, close to half, it's actually over half of all web traffic these days comes from mobile devices. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on what devices visitors are using to access your website, as well as what operating system they're using, so that as you make those updates or redesign your website, it's going to show up beautifully on those devices and on those operating systems. And the advanced analytic metric I spend the most time on are acquisition sources. Tough term to say. It's here where we learn how visitors are finding your site, what and what they're doing when they're there. And that's where using that UTM tracking code becomes very important. Even though Google AdWords and Google Analytics connect nice and seamlessly, I still like to use UTMs whenever possible because it gives me that end-to-end journey that I can easily create based on that source in that medium. And I can also start segmenting by campaign. If we have a campaign that's running on Facebook, LinkedIn, and AdWords, we can say the campaign created this much traffic, but at the same time, we can say, but LinkedIn visitors were looking at this content and Facebook visitors wound up looking at this content. And that really helps us plan for future campaigns as well. I'm a big fan of the source the source campaign information. Like you said, it's a tough term to say sometimes. So now let's look at some sites we've worked on where using the analytics either prior to, during, or after have helped us improve the websites. First one is MyoPain Seminars. They are an acupuncture seminar group that hosts seminars globally. And when they came to us, they had issues tracking their course registrations, tracking instructors and classroom materials throughout their website. So we did in-depth enhancements to their website and their overall digital presence. We introduced some new tools on the back end for managing event registration and added an e-commerce feature so they could sell classroom supplies. The result was they could easily track attendee signups, something that was needed, and they could process those registrations, but they could also track supply interest in sales of those classroom supplies on the e-commerce piece, something they weren't able to do before. And if you run a business that sells stuff, you know that forecasting is an important piece, and now they were able to do that. Another website we worked on was Redpath & Company. When they came to us, Google Analytics was not set up correctly to track visitors and report goal conversions. They went for a complete web redesign, and before the redesign happened, we made sure analytics was working so we could get some baselines. During the redesign, we followed SEO best practices to make sure once the new site was up, things looked great and they would show up in search results, and made sure Google Analytics was properly set up on the new site. So the result was a 25% increase in traffic, the ability to track those goal conversions they couldn't get before, and they reported a positive ROI from their initial investment of the website, which was fantastic. And then there's Caltronic Design and Assembly. They have a very interesting niche market, and they've been with us for a long time. But when they came to us, they had some issues accessing their website, had some outdated models, and they weren't tracking analytics. So we've worked with them, optimized their site, made back-end upgrades and content upgrades. And throughout this, we've been able to track that their SEO health increased from 63 to 89, which is fantastic. And in the first 13 months of working with us, we were able to track 40 goal conversions that led to new business for them and ultimately increased sales due to those leads. So now that we've gone through all of these different KPIs and case studies, you're wondering, well, how do I access this information? There's some great tools out there. Most of them that I've got up here right now are either free or have free versions. So let's start with the one everybody knows about, Google Analytics. Everybody knows about it. It's easy to use. It's free. I was actually working for a Fortune 25 company where we used Google Analytics over other paid options. And when I asked why, the answer was simple. It provided everything we needed. Yeah, there were other options that had more bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, it wasn't going to give us any more information that was going to provide value to us at that time. As the other thing I really like about Google Analytics is if you search Google Analytic Academy, they have some fantastic training videos, whether you're a beginner or a certified user like myself. They are great videos. I think the longest one is maybe 10 minutes. So you can watch them in chunks or all at once if you're so inclined. The other big web analytic tool that most people are familiar with is Adobe Analytics. It was previously called Omniture. I'm not going to lie, this is possibly my favorite analytic tool. The only problem is it's not cheap. It is expensive, and it's primarily used by larger, I'm not even going to say Fortune 500 companies, but maybe Fortune 250 because of its price tag. Adobe allows for some more advanced analytics and more complex custom metrics setup. Google Analytics, you can do custom metrics setup. It's just a little bit easier in Adobe. The other thing people really like about Adobe Analytics is it seamlessly integrates with Adobe's marketing platform. So I've known some companies that really like Adobe's marketing platform, so they bit the bullet and went with Adobe Analytics over Google. When we're talking Google, we can't ignore Google Tag Manager. I think it's only a matter of time until Google integrates Tag Manager right into Analytics. Google Tag Manager works so seamlessly with Google Analytics, and it's used to add that code onto the different goal conversions we talked about. So we could add a code onto a button that is a call to action. We could add the code onto a video if you want to track video plays. And that's where we use Google Tag Manager to easily make those updates without having to go into the back end of our website and add more code to it. Because if you're like me, you can go into the back end of the website and get things done, but it's going to take you a while and you're going to be wondering if you did it right. That's where I love dev teams. I can give them the information, they get it done. Well, with Google Tag Manager, we don't need to do that. We can free up time for our dev team so that they can do some greater, more powerful stuff. The next tool on here is SEMrush. It's a tool most commonly associated with SEO work, but some of those SEO stats can be really helpful as we're looking at the complete story of our website, as we're looking at copy updates. It'll give us some of those keywords. SEMrush has a free version and it has a paid version. I've used both. If you only have one website, you can get a lot of good information out of the free version. I highly recommend taking a look at it. And then there's Bitly. Bitly is a URL shortener. But what I really like about Bitly, aside the fact that it's free, is it will give you some basic analytics as well. So if you're unsure of how to set up those UTMs, but you are going to use Bitly to shorten campaign URLs, Bitly will tell you what platforms are getting the clicks, whether it's Facebook, whether it's an email campaign. It will give you that basic information. It won't give you as much as a UTM, but it can help get you down the right path to see if you should do some homework on UTMs. And then, as mentioned before, the social media platforms. have their own pieces. Facebook business page insights or their creator studio links. Again, those are in a previous blog from earlier this month for us. That will give you your Facebook and Instagram information because Facebook owns Instagram. YouTube has their YouTube studio for your channel. You can get some great information about how many people are viewing individual videos, how many hours total they've watched your videos, and then they have some of the basic demographic information if people have provided it. Twitter analytics is another good one to seek out if you have a Twitter account. Again, it's going to give you some great engagement information on posts, the reach, the retweets, the likes, and some of the basic information on demographics, time of day that your audience is active. That can be very beneficial if you're wondering, what's the best time for me to send this tweet. You can look at it. You can find out Tuesdays at 5 o'clock in the afternoon are when my audience are most active. Well, if I want more people to see a very important post, that's when I want to schedule it for. And then LinkedIn business pages, they'll give you some great information too. One of the things I love about LinkedIn is they have some fantastic demographic information about our audience that we can tap into because we have to fill all of that out when we sign up for LinkedIn. We can see what seniority level at a company somebody is, what industry they're in, typically what their age is. There's so much great information we can pull from LinkedIn that you really need to take some time and look at it and see how it can help your business. So now we have some questions. I'm sure Carly has gotten a few, so why don't you share with me what people are wondering now, Carly?
Of course. Well, just to introduce myself quick, I am Carly. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Evolve. And I've just been facilitating the questions as we went along, and Joe was able to focus on the webinar. So Joe, I'm going to start us off with the first one is, how can I tell if we have Google Analytics on our website?
Great question. So the first thing I usually do is go to the website builtwith.com and put in my domain. And from there, it will typically say if Google Analytics is in there. Otherwise, if you're unsure, you can also right click on anywhere on your website and go with the, let me make sure I'm giving the proper one here. So if I right click, it's the view source, and then do the, if you're on a Mac, Command F, or if you're on a Windows computer, Control F, and type GA-. And if nothing shows up, then you don't have Google Analytics. If something shows up GA-, and then I think it's an 8 or 9 digit code, then Google Analytics is on your website. So once you've identified that, then comes the fun step of figuring out who's got access to it.
For sure. Is this something that Evolve Systems helps set up Google Analytics?
Absolutely. We have set up many analytic accounts. It really does only take a few minutes. I think this week's blog was actually on how to set up an analytics account on your own if you're so adventurous.
Oh, that's helpful. All right, we'll move on to the next question we have here. This one also is about Google Analytics, and it says, how often should I look at my analytics?
I think the tendency is to say, I want to check it every morning or throughout the day. And it's really tempting because one of the views within Google Analytics is real-time analytics. So if somebody's on your website, you can see that they're on there, where their location is, what page they're looking at. And then if they click another page, it changes for you. So it's hard to not want to look at it all the time. I catch myself wanting to do that as well. But if you're looking at it from a high-level view, I recommend at least monthly. If you're starting to see trends, you could look twice a month, but monthly is my best recommendations. In fact, when we do reports, we do them at the monthly cadence, because if you look at it too often, you're going to miss some of those trends, or it's kind of like working the stock market. If you're paying attention to it every day, you're going to get anxious about it unless you're a day trader and understand what you're looking at. But if you look at your report once a month, there's a little more calm and understanding as things tend to normalize over 4 weeks rather than 24 hours.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about for other types of analytics, let's say social media or email marketing?
Email marketing, I like to look at the analytics. There's a great commercial out there. I think it's for Constant Contact, where the guy's sitting at the computer hitting refresh and somebody else walks in and says, "I thought you were going to wait to hit send until I was here to watch with you," as they're watching to see the opens. And I'm definitely guilty of doing that at times, depending on what the email campaign is. But for an email campaign, I like to wait at least 24 hours to get an initial view, and then 72 hours after that. And I think you're going to have a pretty good snapshot of how your campaign did for email.
Does that relate to the fact that like the click-through rates, most people won't always open that within that 24 hours, so waiting that 72?
That's what I've seen over the past decade of looking at email campaigns, is after that 72 hours, numbers really aren't going to change much, where even if you do build a report, if they do change, it's not going to be enough to make a difference. And if they do change drastically, that means somebody forwarded to somebody and it blew up, which is a good thing.
Yes.
You're probably going to know about, because you're going to be getting phone calls. In terms of social media, I say it depends on the platform, because Twitter, I think they say a tweet has a lifespan of something like 2 minutes. But a Facebook post can have a longer lifespan, and LinkedIn longer. So you have to understand the platform. You could check your Twitter analytics each morning to see how yesterday's tweets performed, but Facebook, I would say, wait a little bit longer. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because depends on how much activity you have on social media, which would relate to how often you can check the analytics and see that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this question plays in well to that. So how do I see all my analytics, all the ones you kind of discussed, emails, maybe social media, your Google Analytics, all in one view?
Yeah, and that is, I think, something anybody who wants to see how their stuff is performing wants to know. Unfortunately, there's not a free, cheap, great option out there. There's a lot of BI tools or business intelligence tools that you've probably heard of, like Tableau, Domo. Microsoft has Microsoft Power BI, which has a free version, but it's a little bit clunky and you have to do a lot of connections, and most of the information winds up being downloaded to Excel, and then there's a lot of steps to get it in there. It's very manual. Google has the Google Data Studio, works great with all Google platforms. So if you want to pull in that social information, you have to pay for plugins, or again, download the information into an Excel sheet and then upload it, and it gets tricky. So there's different ones out there, and it's finding the one that works best for you. I've used Domo, I really like it. I've used some Tableau, not bad. But if you're looking for that free or relatively cheap option, I say look at Microsoft Power BI or even Google Data Studio. They have some good options out there. It's just going to take a few YouTube videos to figure out how to use them.
YouTube videos are a savior, though.
Yes, if you can't learn from YouTube, you can't learn.
All right, let's see. This next question we have here is, if my numbers are down compared to the previous month, should I be worried?
That is a difficult one to answer. I like to say, let's not panic. we can't just look month to month. We need to look at the trend. A general rule of thumb is if you have the data for the last 13 months, look at the 13-month trend. So you may have been going up for the last 9 months, and then you're down 10% this month. I'm not going to panic over one down month after 9 straight months. What it is going to do is throw up a yellow flag, and I'm going to monitor it to see where we're at the next month. Did we plateau? Did we rebound? What happened? Or I might be able to see that compared to the previous year, same time frame, we're still way ahead. We were just down compared to last month. Or we have to understand the cyclical cycle as well. You know, are we a consulting firm and it's December? Things are going to be down in December because of Christmas. But if I'm an e-commerce site and I'm down in December, that might be cause for concern.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I think it plays into your examples that you went over during the webinars. There's different situations, just different explanations behind the fluctuations of analytics, and that's something that should be considered.
Absolutely. Like I said, I was monitoring the one website when Hurricane Florence hit, and we had a lot of business coming out of the East Coast at the time. So it wasn't a surprise that traffic was down because power and the internet was down out there.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
All right, we have one more question here is, if I only have time to look at one KPI, one key performance indicator, what should it be?
If you are looking at your website analytics, I say look at that unique visitor. That is, in my opinion, the most important KPI. If you're looking at social media, I say look at the engagement rate. Those are the important ones. And then if we're looking at email campaign, I like that click-through rate as mentioned before. And then if we're looking at paid advertising, I like to look at the click-through rate there as well. A lot of people will focus on the cost per click because that's money being spent, but I think the click-through rate is the most important KPI there.
That is helpful. And I think that's all the questions we have now, but I will give it back over to you to end out the webinar.
Fantastic. Let me move these slides along here. So thank you for attending, or if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. If you found this information useful and beneficial, share the recording with your network. Once we get it out to you, again, that should happen later today. If you're looking for more information in regards to how our team here at Evolve Systems can help you with your website and interpret the analytics, feel free to contact us at evolvesystems.com. You can reach out to Marnie at evolve-systems.com or give us a call at 651-628-4000. Again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you on our webinar next month.